Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and thanks for stopping by. Our dedicated team will guide you through with the latest updates and theories at Starbase, Texas. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon for future streams.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Starbase Weekly live stream. My name is Zach Golden, and I'm excited to be with you all today. Obviously, last week we missed our show, so sorry to everyone that we weren't able to do a show last week, but we didn't have flyover pictures to cover. There's been a lot of unfavorable weather at Starbase over the last few weeks, lots of mostly cloudy days and a little bit of rain, so it gets kind of difficult at those times to get up there and do a flyover, but luckily Mauricio was able to do that for us this week. And actually, just so we mention at the start of the show, these pictures are actually from last Sunday. So a little bit of time has passed between them, but we should be able to cover pretty much everything that went on this week. But we'll also be covering ground shots from yesterday. So with that, I'll introduce our guest for today. And we have Jake with us. Welcome, Jake.
Hey, everyone. It's good to be back. We've got quite a few awesome new photos to go through. There's been quite a lot going on this week, so should be pretty interesting. With that, I'll pass it over to BJ.
Thanks, Jake. Welcome, everyone. Back for another great episode. Great shots that Mauricio was able to get for us for this weekend. Looking forward to sharing them with you guys, and I'll send it over to Steph.
G'day from Australia. Welcome to Starbase Weekly, episode 103. And we're in for a good show today. Back to Zach.
Awesome. And Stephanie will be doing questions and donations for us today. We don't have Astro Joe with us, so thank you for helping us with that, Stephanie. Appreciate it. All right, so let's go ahead and hop into today's show. We have a lot of interesting news this week. Most of you know Elon did his presentation to the employees of Starbase. Was that yesterday? So we'll talk about some of those, some of the news that dropped from that, like as it becomes relevant. We could cover it all at the beginning of the show, but we'll probably talk about it as we get to specific areas that kind of make it a little more relevant. But one of the big things that we do know now is that the next integrated flight test, or I guess Flight 3, is expected to be sometime in February. So we know that we have at least about a month, or maybe half a month, until the next launch. So lots of stuff happening in between now and then. And as always, things have been really busy at Starbase. So we got a lot to cover, as we have pretty much every week lately. So let's go ahead and maybe start off at, I think we'll start off at the Massie site. I was going to say the Port of Brownsville, but we'll cover that stuff after Massie's. So first things first. Well, actually, I'm going to come back to this image. We'll talk about this here in a bit, because we'll work the other way. But yeah, so Massie's. What do we have going on over at Massie's this week? Lots of new updates out here, which we've kind of been touching on, but they're all progressing now. So let's go ahead and get into that. So as most of you know, we do have this flame trench over here, which SpaceX now making progress on with the construction work. And it looks like they've removed a lot of the formwork in here. I'm actually, I know how this process works, but at the same time I don't. So I think this formwork is just for creating the actual gaps that they need down here. There's an actual word for this, but it's escaping me.
Yeah, I think guide wall is what has been referred to.
Right. Yeah. So the guide wall. It looks like they're kind of wrapping up at least on the first half of that, and then I think they still need to do the back half. So they're the same prep work that they did over here. They're doing back here currently. So they're making some good progress, and I think we've been watching the cranes move around back there over the last week or so. So it likely is progressed even further from what it looks like now at this point. So yeah, this is a bit of a slow process, and I think it's going to be, I don't know, at least another maybe possibly 2-3 months before we see it finalized. But yeah, is there anything else you guys wanted to add on this? There really isn't a ton to talk about with it.
Only that they've taken some of the formwork out. You can see just to your left of your mouse a little bit there, and the cages are getting made over there further to the left, obviously.
Yeah, so these are the rebar cages that will slide down into the ground once they have the slurry wall poured. Actually, I think they may actually put these in the ground, put these down there before the slurry wall. I'm not sure the order of that.
The slurry wall goes in. Well, you see what they built there now. Then they fill that with slurry. Then they drop the cages in whilst pumping out the slurry at the same time, and then they'll put the concrete in, creating the actual trench wall. And
right.
That's my understanding of it.
Yeah, and they do it section by section, so they'll do these one at a time, and then those will become essentially underground forms for the adjacent sections. But yeah, they got a ton of work to do on that, and all the equipment back here is related to that. But while they're doing this, they're also working on the actual tank farm facilities. So on this side, we have the vertical methane tanks that arrived, I think about 2 weeks ago at this point, which will be located right in this location back here. And they're also getting ready for the actual methane distribution part of the tank farm. So this is basically the kettle boilers that are back here. So they got 2 of them. These are pretty much identical to what they have at the orbital launch site. And what's a little different from what they did at the launch site is the pumps seem to be, they're basically going to be above ground instead of below grade. So this is definitely a big difference from what's at the launch site, where they basically drilled large holes into the ground and then put a large steel casing into the ground, and then these sleeves for the actual pumps themselves went inside of the casing. So for this, it looks like they're doing that above ground. I guess it makes it a little bit simpler as far as construction work goes, they don't need to actually put anything underground and have to worry about the water table pushing it back up. So I think this is their way of working around that. And I think we also have some updated ground shots of this that show that they've already started installing these pumps. So let me swap over to that.
Yes, and the methane tanks have been stood up as well, there you can see.
Yeah, we can see those two vertical methane tanks over there. And let me see if I can find the shot that actually shows the pumps. 1 second here.
There it is. Yeah, right there.
Yep, you can see it in there, just behind the ladder, the lower half of that upper staircase.
Back here.
Just to the left of the white vertical tank. Yeah. There it is. Just above your mouse, right there.
Oh, yeah. There we go. Wasn't expecting it to be that tall, actually. So, here you can see this is the pump itself down here. It's kind of tough to see with this staircase in the way, but the actual pump itself is right here, and it extends down into that sleeve that we were showing from above. And then you have the actual motor on top. So looks like they've gotten at least one of those installed already. And they're moving pretty quickly on this in general, I would say. So, if they want to start constructing the next launch tower at the orbital launch site, they need to be able to move static fire testing away from the suborbital launch site. So, we're pretty much assuming that a lot of the new structures for that second launch site will probably be within the footprint of where the suborbital test stand, the suborbital test stand and suborbital tank farm. It'll probably be in that area. So they need to actually move static fire testing to Massie's before they can start construction work on that second launch tower. So they're putting in a lot of work to get this done as quickly as possible and get it up and operational. So we've seen other work down here related to extending the pipes over to this new test stand. So looks like they're pretty much extending off of the existing pipe work over here, which goes over to the booster test stand and the ship cryo station. So you can see the underground culverts that they have right here with pipe racks, and they're basically preparing for those pipes to go underground. This is essentially like a drive over so that they can still drive in this area. And basically run the pipes past there without having to, actually drive around them, essentially. So, yeah, lots of work to put all this together. It's a lot of moving parts going on, and you can also see these other two kettle boilers right here, and not 100% sure how they're going to hook these up yet. So. We mentioned that behind here is where the methane part of the tank farm is, and kind of assuming that this will be is liquid oxygen. So they already have pumps here, and they probably, it's tough to tell whether or not they're going to actually install larger ones like they have for the methane. But I think they may just leave these smaller pumps in use. They actually have 3 of them currently, and it looks like they're adding a 4th, possibly a 5th one. Hold on, let me get a different angle.
Yeah, it looks like there's going to be a 5th one there. There's another set of valves.
Yeah, tough to. Yeah, so there's room for 5 of them. So it looks like they're going with these smaller pumps for the liquid oxygen, and these will send it through the actual kettle boilers. And also over here, y'all can see these foundations, the auger pilings in the ground over here, which are very similar, if not identical, to the ones that they did at the orbital tank farm for the new horizontal tanks. So these are basically similar to, let me pull them up for y'all really quick. I forget a good picture showing them. So
Just by doing that, the methane pumps have both been installed. Just one of them was hidden behind that vertical white tank.
okay. Yeah, so the foundations are similar to these ones. And so essentially we're going to be seeing probably identical tanks for these as these moved over to the Massie site. So they must have got a pretty good deal on these because they got a lot of them incoming. So I think
It does sort of look like though these might be slightly shorter, but probably same diameter. Or would the full length fit in that footprint?
I think the full length will fit there. The tanks are kind of tall, so I think even if they came all the way past here, that it would go over it. But it's tough to say for sure when you're comparing this to the orbital launch site. I mean, I think they're only slightly longer than these other tanks, so I think they'll fit in here pretty well without actually going all the way to that backside.
And do you reckon that's probably just going to be more oxygen or something else there maybe?
It's tough to say. So, I mean, with the way that this site is configured, it's kind of hard to know what anything is. So, I mean, we know back there that this is probably methane because it's separated away from everything else. But it's tough to know like whether you have liquid nitrogen or liquid oxygen in these. We're kind of assuming that currently they're mostly liquid nitrogen because they don't necessarily have a need for liquid oxygen at this point. And so, you know, few of these tanks are meant for the test structure over here, and then the other two seem to be routed back here for these two test stands. So, with that said, I mean, it's possible that all of these can remain nitrogen since that's what most of their testing will be is, you know, cryo testing for the ship and booster. And then you have, you know, 2 liquid oxygen tanks and then your 2 smaller methane tanks over there. That kind of seems like it would make sense. But yeah, I mean, this is currently 3 times larger than the suborbital tank farm. So it'll be about closer to 4 times larger, if not slightly more, once they have these 2 tanks in here.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible how much this site has changed since SpaceX took over.
Yeah, I would say that when they first started all this construction work out here, it was kind of hard to imagine and or accept that that this kind of testing would be occurring out here. But I think it's pretty efficient. Like it's pretty awesome that this was even available in the first place, and you know, very convenient for SpaceX to have this available to actually use because I think this is in some degrees it kind of like sped up their operations. You know, they're not having to close the launch site for cryo testing, so we have seen since this flyover ship 20. Wait, this is 30.
Yeah, that's 30,
Yeah.
and then you got booster 12 booster.
So ship 30 finished, I think, 2 or 3 cryo tests.
Yeah.
And booster 12 performed, I think it's performed 2 at this point. So they did, for the first test, I think they just did the methane tank. And then last night they did the liquid oxygen tank and like a partial fill of the methane tank. And these tests are, I think, a little bit different than what we saw at the launch site. I'd have to go back and like actually compare them, but they've been a lot longer. So I was talking to Jax about this last night, and you know, because I've been working on this episode for like 2 months now. But last night I was, you know, glancing over at the live streams, and I noticed that they had started this cryo test on booster 12. And then, I don't know, probably like 6 hours later, I looked at it again, and it still looked the exact same. And I thought all the streams were frozen or something like that. And I think it was like, Jax, why is this thing still full? And he's like, oh, that's kind of how they do it now. The tests are a lot longer than they were when they're at the launch site. And I don't know if this is just because of a change in procedure, or if it's just related to like, that's kind of how they would have wanted to do it over at the launch site, but they're trying to like limit their amount of closure hours, or their road closure hours. So now their testing seems to be more like routine. So the same exact tests that they performed on ship 28, ship 29, all got done the exact same on ship 30, and the same things that they did for booster 10 and 11 were done to booster 12. As far as
my guess,
super long tests.
My guess is, obviously before, you have your cryoproofing on one day, then you have your pack shucking on another day. You have separate days for different tanks. But now I think they're doing a lot more integrating of different tests in on each day, So I think that maybe that's why the tests are longer.
Yeah. And it's really, I mean, I would love to know more about it, because having a ship full for hours kind of makes sense. Like if you think about, preparing for like orbital depots where it's going to be in space with like, a full tank for days, if not weeks, just orbiting. But the booster doesn't make as much sense. You're never going to really have a full booster for 7 hours. You know what I mean? On actual flight operations. So I think there's a lot of like individual tests that are being performed like within the vehicle during that 7 hours, and also maybe some actual like cryo hardening of the stainless steel. And we're not sure if they still actually perform that or not, but I guess it kind of seems like it based on the length of those tests. But yeah, well, I guess what I was saying is that it would be nice to hear more about that actual testing procedure, so we kind of get an idea of like all the things that they're actually doing during that time. But I guess, good luck getting them to tell us that these days. So moving on, what else do we have going on out here? I'm guessing this is probably like some sort of comms building is nearing completion. So they've gotten most of the roofing and siding on it. I think they're nearing completion on that. We don't know if the bridge crane has been installed in here or what it's even for. It's near impossible to see inside of there anymore. So no idea if that's been installed yet, but it's looking like the at least exterior of this is nearing completion. So I'm sure we'll find out more what it's actually used for once it's closer to being finished.
It did seem to be a bit of a pause on the construction on that for a while, but then that may be because they were just waiting on materials. But yeah, now it seems to be looking a lot more complete now.
Yeah, they're definitely moving pretty quickly. We sat there waiting for it to, to see some progress on it for months, and now, at least it's nearing completion. So, what else do we have out here?
The I was about to say the nose cone cage, or structural testing cage, if you want to call it these days. They totally disassembled the other half of it. I don't know for sure whether they actually scrapped it, or if they've literally just disassembled it and stored the other parts somewhere else, or maybe working on. They may even be inside of that new building, the parts for the other half of the nose cone cage. But yeah, we just don't really know for sure.
Yeah, I have a feeling that they scrapped it. This thing's been around for, like 3 years now. And they never took it apart during that time. They did, separate it into two different pieces based on the configuration of testing that they were doing, but they never actually disassembled it. So I have a feeling that they probably fully scrapped it, which is interesting because you would think they would just keep it around in case they need to do future testing on different configurations or changes to the nose cones, but I guess not. Especially with HLS, I would have thought they would need to do that type of test again on the HLS, but I don't know, maybe not.
I mean, I did see a suggestion that maybe they're redesigning this cage completely.
Sure.
Yeah, I can't see the need for the cage to go away completely. That doesn't quite make sense to me. So yeah, I can maybe see a redesign.
Yeah, I mean, these are, other than the suborbital test stands, I think these are the two test structures that have been around the longest, and they've both been reconfigured multiple times. I mean, this actual cage looks like it's seen better days. So yeah, maybe it is time to just redo it, at least the upper cage part of it.
Maybe they'll have some version 2 stuff to test in there yet. And while
Yeah,
they've taken the cap off the cane crusher, moved it away, and that drilling rig is there. And in the ground shot, you can see that drilling rig is turned around and facing the other way. So they're drilling somewhere there near where the cane crusher cap was.
Yeah, so we may actually see some additional foundations down here by the time they do the next flyover, which kind of makes sense because this is one of the only areas that, other than here where they're obviously still adding more tanks, like up until this point, it hasn't looked like they're adding anything here, but they still haven't, put concrete down. So I guess it's a good sign that something else is about to be added in this location.
Yeah, I wonder if it's another test stand of some kind for a different type of structural testing. Because I can't see more tanks going there. That seems like an odd place for that.
Yeah, very true. And one thing I've been wondering if, and I don't really see a need necessarily, but maybe moving the ship cryo stand a little bit. Like if they moved this down to this location, to me that would actually make a little more sense. And the only reason is because of the location of the flame trench. So I wouldn't really worry about it for the booster as much, but with the ship, as far as like keeping the tiles protected, I think it may make more sense to move it out of the way so it's not, having that steam cloud go across the back of it every time they do a static fire test. But at the same time, there may not necessarily be a ship here while they're doing the static fire test. So I don't know. I personally think we will begin seeing, like, once they start doing testing, we'll begin seeing 2 ships at this location at the same time. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what they end up doing down here, though.
I mean, can we maybe expect to see another trench in the future as well, possibly? Because if it goes parallel to the other one that's being constructed now, then maybe these cryo test pads might be right in the way then. So maybe they have to really start moving things around.
Yeah, I mean, that would be interesting if they had two of these static fire stands back here. It's not impossible, that's for sure. I mean, they did have 2 test stands at Suborbital, and at the end of the day, like, I think it makes sense to have 2 because, if you have an issue with one of them, then you can always use the other. They're currently doing that with the launch mount and the launch tower. So I think that it only makes sense to have 2 of these as well. And they did that with the Suborbital site as well, making sure that, after a launch, as they're doing, fixing up that Suborbital launch pad, they still had another one operational to use, and they would actually switch back and forth between the 2 of them up until at least the end of that Suborbital hop test era. All right. Anything else at Massie's that we needed to cover?
You pretty well got it all covered there, thanks.
Yeah, I think we're good.
We've got some questions and donations though.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so we've got Vickers Rohullos have become a new member. Thank you very much. And we've got some donations. Sharpie, $10. Dedication and efforts are always recognised here. Much kudos to the RGV team. and starting a train. Thank you, Sharpie. Steve Cates with $1.99 saying choo choo. Jim Cabot, $5. Yeah, like Sharpie said. Rocket Profit, $10. Thank you very much. Hopping on the appreciation $10 chain. Choo choo. And we got a $10. Is Macy's too small for ramped up testing? ? From Nose Cone Jail. I'll go ahead.
I don't think so. I mean, it is small, but it's large enough for a static fire test stand to come here. So I think it definitely has more potential for even more facilities than what we've already see them working on. So, I mean, I don't see a need for it necessarily, but theoretically, you probably could fit like 2 or 3 more test static fire flame trenches in this area. So, they have this whole back corner over here that they haven't even touched.
Yeah, and
Okay, go on.
I suppose if they ever manage to acquire the land in that top corner, they could possibly turn that into a new cryo pad, a testing pad location, maybe, and then move them from where they are now.
Yeah, I mean, eventually they're gonna need more space. I guess we've yet to see back-to-back testing here. So like ship 30 going back and then ship 31 coming out right after. So it doesn't look like they're approaching a backlog at all. But at some point they probably will, which could make it necessary to expand even further. And you mentioned them purchasing this land. Do they not own this part of it?
No, I think that's still state-owned property. I think they use that for border patrol boats. Well, that's what I've been told anyway. It's because they used to have the boats parked there in the past, but I haven't seen them there in a while. But it does look like SpaceX still don't have access to that land.
Yeah, they
Hence
have
that little cut off.
Yeah.
Okay, another question is Elon's presentation cut up at the question and answer part. Is there been a question and answer portion being posted? I'm not sure about that.
Probably not.
And what's the green fluid? Well, Wicked Code asks, what's the green fluid in the open containers? That's all to do with the slurry part of the operation here.
Basically, it's just water.
Yeah.
And Seabreeze is asking, which direction do you think the diverter exit will be pointing? And we believe it's going to be pointing towards Highway 4. And we only think that because of the pad up above, it looks like they're going to bring the ships right around the top of on the left-hand side of Macy's, all the way around up to the top there on that pad up the top and bring them down onto the flame trench there. Now another question is, Santi's just been questioning the actual validity of our thoughts of the actual being a flame trench here, but it's becoming more and more obvious every day.
I mean, I don't know. People have been questioning us on that one for the beginning of time, but it's pretty obvious at this point that they're going to be doing static fire testing here. I don't know if we need to go in and prove it more. I mean, they're putting 60-foot walls into the ground, like
plus plus Kathy Lude has said a little while ago in that meeting that they're planning on moving more testing to Massie's. And I mean, what else can you move from the launch site apart from actual engine testing and static fire testing?
Right.
Right, and we've got some gifted memberships. Methane Man gifted 5 memberships, thank you. 1 second. T. Evans gifted membership. 1 second. I'll catch up with the rest of them in a second. Thank you, Zach.
Cool. All right. Well, let's move over to the Sanchez site. But before we do, I'm going to move a little bit further up the road. So this is Jefferson. Wait, actually, no, this isn't Jefferson Road right here.
Richardson Road.
Richardson Road, yeah, sorry. So this is a kind of close. I think you can basically see all the bays from right here when you're standing in this location. So this is a plot of land which we've been kind of keeping our eyes on and trying to figure out what is going on in this location. And I think we may finally have an answer on that. So yesterday, a few people posted this to Twitter, or X, I guess you can call it. This one in particular, I'm just pulled up one that Starship Gazer retweeted. So what we're seeing here is call it SpaceX Rio West. So these are two projects that are happening in this area. So one of them is a restaurant, $6 million restaurant, so 3,500 square feet with indoor dining space and outdoor deck overlooking the Rio Grande River, and it aims to serve the neighborhood, development, and adjacent community at large. Then we also have a retail project, so designed as a commercial use building with a grocery store, retail shops, and a cafe. I don't really know what they meant by this. The other on-site improvements include landscaping and a staff parking lot with 7 stalls. Is that 7 parking spaces? Like, I don't get what they mean by this right here. And
It does seem to seem how they worded it. Although 7 stalls for staff seems strangely small.
Really, you're gonna have 7 parking spots? But yeah, so I think, and I may have to double check this by typing in this address. I can't just copy and paste this right here, but I'm pretty sure that is the location that we're looking at. We will have to verify that, but I'm pretty positive that's what this location is. So not quite on site, I guess you can call it. There's not really room for this in the actual village, I guess. But it's close enough. It stops them from having to drive all the way back to Brownsville, at least for basic necessities. So that's gonna be pretty interesting. And I guess they're expecting this to be completed. I think in December of 2024, it said. So at the end of this year. So yeah, that'll be another thing for us to keep our eyes on. Cool. So let's go ahead to the Sanchez site. And or not. Okay, there we go. So on this side of the facility, most of y'all are aware, we have the ground fabrication building. And, for the last few months, they've been doing their final outfits on the building, but it looks like it's actually active now. So we've seen tons of pipes move around in this location, which may sound kind of boring to mention, but it's just a sign that this building is actually active. So they're constructing all of the new tank storage area at the orbital tank farm, and all of that pipework usually in the past would be constructed in the ground fabrication building. So the actual launch mount itself was constructed outside of this building when it was in its previous location. And all of the pipework for the integration tower and the tank farm was constructed within that building. So that's pretty much what they do here, is just general ground fabrication, which is, the G in GSE this is a GSE building essentially. So, yeah, we can see the new pipe stands over here, which are similar to the ones that they have been installing at the launch site. So that's like another clue that these are coming from this building and that they're actually finally working in there. So good thing to see. And this is kind of why that tent that was near the village, if y'all remember, I'll just go ahead and show that area. So the tent that was located back here was the temporary ground fabrication building as they were finishing construction on this one. So once they got rid of that, I guess that was kind of the real first sign that this was operational again. So good news there.
Just on that, Zach, on the that GSC building, the left-hand corner closest to us, there's some racks there. I've seen fittings and pipes staged in that area that have disappeared. So it looks like they're also doing pipe work in there already as well.
Yeah, all the pipe work and the pipe stands being done in here. And there's, a larger pile of it on this side, and pretty much everything that has come out of this building has ended up at the launch site. And we'll kind of talk more about like where all of that is going, which I'm sure most of you already know where it's going. But yeah, we'll kind of look at that more on the ground shots as we get to the launch site.
Before you move away from the GSE building, we actually have another very interesting bit of hardware sitting outside of it. On the very left-hand side, you zoom in where that little blue container is, on the left side of the building. We actually have a piston for the next set of chopsticks.
Oh, interesting. Let me see if I can get a better angle on that.
And
Sure
I think
is.
it's speculated to have come from KSC.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm assuming that most of those smaller components are going to be delivered by truckloads instead of actually shipping them. So yeah, interesting to finally see that stuff showing up. And speaking of that, one of the things that we're expecting in this area soon is for all of the launch tower sections to be moved here. So in these positions on this side. And so let's go ahead and, I guess, move back to the port for a second, because there is, we know that the first tower section showed up. Well, was it like 2 weeks ago at this point?
Yep.
So they brought it into the port. I'm going to have to find the actual picture that shows it, because the barge is kind of small and hard to see. So don't mind me while I try to find this.
It was at the very top there. Now it's on the left-hand side, down a bit.
Yeah, I think it might be in this shot. Here we go. Cool.
Yep.
Yeah, so here we go. This is the first tower section. I guess this is actually section like 8 or 9 on the actual tower. But yeah, so they offloaded those 2 tanks that were on here, and this was offloaded, I think, probably about maybe 3 days ago at this point. So as far as we know, it's kind of just sitting down here on top of SPMTs. They have the SPMTs right here, and we're just essentially waiting for it to move up the road to Starbase. I'm not sure if I was been kind of expecting it to happen at night, because this thing is really large, so it's going to pretty much shut down the road as it's going, and on both directions of traffic. So I think this may officially be the largest item moved from this location once it moves. So yeah, we're waiting to see that actually move up the road, but I think we're probably going to see additional tanks moving to the launch site first. So we have some additional tanks, and I'm actually not positive if these are the right size. I think these are actually too small, but
I think
those are the 2 that were removed from Sanchez.
are you sure?
Yeah, they
That was
definitely are.
what most of us were observing, because they came in, but maybe not.
Well, that would make sense, because they kind of just disappeared, and they need ones of this size back at KSC.
Musical tanks going on there.
Yeah, that's really funny, actually, because a lot of the tanks, well, pretty much all of the tanks at Massie's came from KSC, and so they had to rob them basically from the launch site at Pad 39A. So I think these are the same size as what they brought here, and they gotta like trade them back, give them back their stuff, essentially. But yeah,
Interestingly, yeah. Those 2 tanks didn't.
Sorry, go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, interestingly, though, those 2 tanks there didn't actually seem to leave on the barge that brought in the tower section. So I guess maybe someone else is taking them back.
So I was just going to say, chat's telling you that's section 7 of the tower there, Zach.
what was that?
segment that came over on the board was for segment is the silent level.
Sounds like your mic is having some issues there.
Bit potatoey. Yes, that's tower section 7 on the barge. Oh, yeah, next to the barge.
Stand by really quick. Let's see if BJ can get that mic issue. Maybe do a short test of it. You may have to. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Restart or something. Let me try.
Yeah, I would maybe just get out of Discord and then come back in, and maybe that might fix it.
Just while we got a quick break, Kenneth Coates put in a $20 PayPal donation saying, have a good flight. And on that, there's Mauricio's in the air right now. We're not going to see the aerial photos on this live stream today, but we're going to have a Patreon session after this show finishes, and we'll see some more aerials. If you'd like to become a Patreon member and come and join us, you'll be quite welcome.
Yeah, we'll have BJ see if we can exit Discord and get back in, and then hopefully that fixes that issue. Yeah, sorry everybody. But yeah, moving back over to the Sanchez site, we have the second of the new transport stands nearing completion. They've started to actually install the clamps, so they have the arms that the clamps sit on, but I think about half of the clamps have been installed at this point. You can see some more right here actually on the pallet. And I think they may possibly be preparing to construct a third one. So I think this is the size for that, right, Jake?
No, go next to the black ring to the right. Go back by the container.
Yeah, wow, duh.
That's where they're going to be doing it.
Yeah, so I guess the next one be constructed there. So I don't know what this one is for then.
It's got 10. Being 10, it's probably got booster related.
And it's not using the same feet to work on like they did with the booster engine installation stand. So yeah, I'm not quite sure what this is actually going to be for. It's a little different.
Well, I guess we have yet another new object that will be under construction here soon.
Can I just jump in, Zach? We've got a very generous donation from Sea Breeze with $100 saying, getting warmed up to eat my shoe and pay Zach for being correct about the flame trenches.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you, Sea Breeze. I don't know if I needed to be paid for that, but that's awfully generous of you. I don't think, for everybody who knows, we do not have a bet going. I don't have any active bets with anybody, so yeah, we're not taking bets out here, but all right. Still appreciate you.
I thought you'd like that.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. But I should start doing that. That would actually be funny. Yeah, so moving on, we have the next install stand for the ships. So this is basically similar to the one that went in Megabay 2, where ship 29 is currently sitting on. So I think they're just slowly working on these, and they need these finished in order to fully start using that building. So as they complete this, we'll see more ships move from high bay and into Megabay 2. But yeah, I'm surprised they're not moving faster on those, honestly, just because it seems like they would want to get to work quickly, or start using that building and kind of free up space in high bay. And I think just in general, it's a little more ideal using this because ships that would normally be in the rocket garden could actually just stay in the mega bay on top of these stands while they're doing the final outfitting. And on that note, in particular, we have actually, it's not out here. I was going to say ship 28, but.
So yeah, before we move on as well, I think we got BJ back with us as well.
Yeah, you got me now.
much better.
Excellent. Yeah, I was getting the slow there. But yeah, I think I agree with all those stands. I feel like, too, one of the things that could help with not having to work on all those pieces while they're on transport stands kind of might allow them to not need as many transport stands by having those stations set up and having each of those locations, even if it's not just, even if there's different stations for engines or just basic work and things like that.
Yeah, it requires a lot more shuffling. To some degree, I think it was convenient having those the booster transport stands. The original version of it was like the perfect height for their the initial cryo stand that they had set up next to the launch tower, and so they could do basic cryo tests on those stands, whereas these ones are kind of just for transport only. So it requires them to move it off of this onto a different stand when they want to take it to do cryo testing. But well, actually, on that note, it wouldn't be on this until it had engines, I guess. So only boosters with engines that need to go back and forth to the launch site will be on these, instead of also having to share it back and forth to Massie's. So yeah, you're probably right about that. Less transport stands, at least for now. And on that note, I think they've scrapped another of the old transport stands this week. There was one in the ring yard, which they brought down to Sanchez and scrapped that. So
I think the one you're talking about, I think that actually came back from the launch site. It was the one they moved back to the launch site just after IFT-2 for some unknown reason.
yeah, I think they just needed a place to store it before they had time to scrap it. Their scrap team, their scrap yard, has been very busy lately. So I think they have a backlog of things that they need to destroy. So we'll touch on some of those items as well as we keep going through this. There is another thing down here that I want to mention, but I think I'm going to save that till we get to the launch site. Let's keep moving on, though. So I mentioned Ship 28. Ship 28 is currently at the Rocket Garden, right?
High bay.
Oh, it's in the high bay.
Yeah,
Right.
It's on the turntable.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, 32s and 32 went to the Rocket Garden.
Right, in place of okay. So right now, at the time of taking this picture, they were preparing to lift Ship 26 onto the engine install stand. So let's go ahead and take a look at some ground shots of Ship 26, because this seems to be the ship that's gotten more attention than pretty much any other ship as far as continued construction work goes.
Well, and they've been indecisive with 26, I feel like, too, because after this flyover, they disconnected, moved it back into the Rocket Garden, and then, of course, since then have gotten it to where it is now in that picture.
Yeah. It's quite the mystery. I think at one point, there was a pretty good idea of what they were going to do with it, but now it's gotten even more confusing. So as y'all can see, a few weeks ago, they only had, we got excited that they had, one layer of extra stringers on it. Then a few weeks later, they did another layer, and now they have yet another layer. So these are very interesting. I don't know what to say about it. We have no idea what's really going on here. We kind of thought that they may be used, so you install the stringers and then cut it off below that, so that you have basically a test article that you could then, focus on the actual payload section and over reinforce what's below it, since you don't want this to fail before the part that you're actually testing. But now it's just really confusing. They have stringers going up for a third level, and for all we know, they could end up putting them up here too. So I don't know. Have you guys come up with any new ideas of what's going on with this?
No.
I mean, my take on it is, if you're trying to find the answer to 26 is like trying to find the answer to life. How confusing it's getting.
Yep.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But I mean, at this point, I think I don't know. We're still sure that it's not going to fly. I think there was maybe some thoughts that they still might fly this at some point, but I think the reason that it's on the engine test stand is so that they can, or not the engine test stand, engine install stand, is so that they can remove the engines. And matter of fact, is that an engine right there?
No,
No, you're looking
far,
at the
that's the
leg
far
on the other
leg.
side.
Sorry.
And the other thing that's basically ruling out 26 flying now is the fact that they've put stringers straight over the lower load points on the ship. So basically, the chopsticks can't properly engage with the ship anymore for stacking.
Well, I guess that's a good sign that it's not going to fly. Yeah, so this has been a huge mystery, and I guess that just continues until we actually see what they do with this. But yeah, pretty sure that they may be removing the engines. One thing that's different from the past is that Remedios is closed now, so people can't just park outside of this location and watch them remove the engines. So it's a lot more difficult for us to actually know if they've done that. But kind of just assuming that that's what's going on here. All right. So what else?
We've so you got obviously the water tank there, but it looks like we may be seeing an extra water tank joining it at a later date, because we've got a little square of pilings in the ground there. And nearby as well, we've actually got parts for a second water tank. If you zoom out a bit, and then go to the horizontal water tanks on the left, or tank, I should say. So all those white pieces there for another water tank
These?
of the same style. Yeah. So those are the panels, the rectangles, and then you've got the little white caps as well, which get installed on the sides.
Mm-hmm.
And a bit of speculation is that water tank and building is for fire system for the offices for a sprinkler system, only because of the pipe going between the building and the tank is painted red, which to me indicates it's a fire system. And you can see in the door there on the white building, you can actually see a fire pump, I think.
Yeah, there's what appears to be a pump on top of a little concrete pedestal in there. So kind of assuming, that this is feeding into that pump. So this is interesting and also kind of weird, I would say, mostly because of how far away it is. So, typically these kind of pump stations are inside of the building that they're being used for, but that's not really the case for this one. So if it is for the site, then it's likely, I would imagine, for the 2 megabays, and that would be like the fire suppression system just for those buildings. But I don't know. I think it could have multi-use. This is having 2 of these is kind of a lot of water. I guess you want enough water for each building, but I mean, are you ever going to have a fire on both buildings at the same time?
I mean, we do have other water pipe work being put in the ground nearby as well. So yeah, these
You mean
tanks
up in this area?
Yeah, so they like you said, they may be multi-use.
This is an interesting maze of pipe work going on down here.
I know, it doesn't seem to fit anything in particular. It's all over the place.
Yeah, it almost gives me recollections of the building that they're putting in over at the launch site for the restrooms and whatnot. Whether maybe there's another building going in there for area restrooms.
Yeah. No idea on this one, but it does almost look like it's about to go across the street. So, if this does go over to the Mega Bay, that would kind of explain its purpose. But the thing about this is actually coming out of the building and heading down this area is conduit. So this may just be, there's all conduit in this path down here. So they may just be connecting it to the actual the rest of the grid with this. But we'll have to keep our eyes on that. I mean, with the Remedios being closed, they can easily shut down this road and put pipes underneath it all the way to wherever it needs to go. So we'll just have to be on the lookout for that actually to happen. Let's see. Is there anything else at Sanchez that we haven't touched on?
I think we've pretty much covered everything. I mean, obviously you got the new scrapyard there, right near the inventory tent, with a booster methane downcomer section there for some unknown reason.
Oh
If you
wait,
go
sorry.
go to where the booster transport stand is, to your left.
Right.
So yeah, right there. So I don't know, is it maybe a defective part or maybe another redesign on the way of some kind? So yeah, right next to your cursor, that's the booster. Yeah, right there.
Yeah, gotta love the way the scrapyard continues to move around all over the place. But this is ship 27's aft section right here. Wait, hold
33.
on. This is
33.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
33. Because I know there was 15, 33, and 27 that all had aft sections laying around. So ship 33, this is the last of the version 1s that they're obviously not going to use. So yeah, that's why this is being scrapped. Then this is the version 1 transport stand, also probably being scrapped in this area. All right. Well, I guess let's move over to the ring yard.
Is this where we try to bring in Jax?
I don't know. I think Jax would have let me know if he was going to show up, but if we get surprised, we get surprised. Yeah, so we have lots of new work on the Mega Bay. As y'all know, this is finally active now. You can see the well, it's tough to actually see the ship because it's got the tiles on this side, but ship 29 is sitting back here on top of the engine install stand. And so they're presumably installing engines on ship 29 right now. They've also finally started to work on this roof and put the roof panels down. See a few people up here laying those out. They've also, if from the side, I'm going to grab a ground shot here. Have started the exterior paneling for the top section of the building above the windows. So this thing is moving really fast. It's actually faster than Mega Bay 1 by a long shot, in my opinion. They didn't have windows on it for like nearly, was it 9 months, almost a year after they constructed it. So odd thing that happened this week. I'm gonna see if I can get a better like close-up picture of this.
Yeah, they had a bit of an oopsie.
Yeah, so we noticed it one morning, and there was some panels that were damaged and kind of sticking off of this building. So it was really weird because I haven't seen any like cranes working in this area. So I'm not sure if something on the inside damaged those, or if they actually, were lifting something at night and it hit the building. But I guess it's lucky that it hit down here instead of the actual windows. But I think it was something on the inside. There actually is a crane in this building currently, which is doing a lot of work on the interior of the bay. So I think it was probably a crane lifting from the inside of the building that ended up damaging this.
So there's a staircase in that corner, so perhaps a steel beam came through like off that crane or something. You might be right there. I mean, I'm wondering whether they took time on Mega Bay 1's office because they were waiting for that fire suppression system to be installed as well. It's just another little speculation.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, as far as the staircase goes, I think the staircase ends down here. So it doesn't go all the way up to the top, but the platform, there's like a long sloped set of stairs that go from the edge of the staircase over to the penetration through the floor over here. So it doesn't go all the way quite to the roof. So it's kind of thinking possibly that it happened on the staircase, but then remembered that they don't really necessarily go up that high. So yeah, tough to say for sure. Obviously, with never being able to see the inside of that building, having no idea what's going on in that corner, kind of hard to fully speculate about that. But moving back to the aerial shot.
Yeah, and the other thing, obviously, saying how much faster they're going with this bay, I guess simply just because they just learned a lot of lessons from constructing Mega Bay 1. So they just got a more clear plan with this new bay from the start.
Yeah, I think to me it feels like they're actually planning on needing the floor space up here. So as far as we know, they haven't actually moved any like office equipment up here or anything like that. Like it's just vacant. Similar to the right side of the high bay, they haven't really fully used these that much. The only part that is used is the left side of the high bay. So I think maybe they finally have a need for more office space, and they're like trying to get this upper part of the building done faster. But I don't know; it's tough to tell. But luckily, these windows aren't shaded, so we'll be able to see on the inside of it and kind of get a better idea of what's going on the inside over the coming months. What else do we have going on over here? Oh, well, it seems like they've actually finally finished the major part of construction, at least anything that this LR 11,000 was needed for. So they begun disassembling it, as you can see here. At this point, I think the entire thing has been taken apart. The only thing that's left are the tracks and the superstructure. I think they're pretty much done with it. And I was kind of speculating in the past that we would see this stay here longer and maybe start work on the high bay. And I'm still hoping that happens. But at least it's not going to be immediate, it appears.
The other thing with Mega Bay 2 is they've started the roof, putting the roof on the very top as well.
Yeah, I mentioned that a few minutes ago.
Wow.
They've got that roofing up there with the guys on top of the building.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, and with the Mega Bay 2, we can also see in the ground shots that the doorway framing has now gone full height on the left side of the door. I'm not sure. I think this right side is still maybe missing the short beam that finishes it off before the header.
Oh, yeah, I think we need the some ground shots for that.
Yeah, and that's what mostly the yellow TNT crane that came in has been mostly working on those elements of the doorway.
Let me grab a shot from the side of that. Yeah, so you can see those beams going all the way up to the top over here. I think another thing that this crane has possibly been working on, or I don't know if they've just been using the aerial platform for, but y'all can see the lights that have been installed in the back. I want to call these LEDs, but at least at this point, I'm not really sure. They could potentially be like neon lights. Somebody corrected me on that before for the ones at the launch site. But you can see them mounted on the back wall back here. And just like the other Mega Bay, these things are super bright at nighttime. Like on the Lab Padres camera, you can not even see inside of this building at night because of how bright these lights are. So yeah, it's pretty well lit.
And I'd say it's a pretty good way of hiding things without having an actual door on there.
Yeah, I mean, if you have the right camera settings, it's easier to actually see in there. But in order to do that, you're focusing on that, and you won't be able to see anything else on the outside of it.
Yeah, and they've been using the window cleaner scaffold systems for all that work on the back. They had all the lifts and whatnot, as opposed to using cranes and bucket lifts.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
It's in there now, on that lights that's missing there, fourth one down. I think that it's being used now. Yep.
Awesome.
Go
Go
two
ahead.
booster sections outside High Bay 1 at the moment, two on the ground shot. You can see a second one. You can see one there on the aerial shot. There's a second one on the left in the ground shot as well. And that'll be for booster 13's methane section.
Yeah, I think it was early this morning. I think it was they finally moved the B13 forward dome section over to Mega Bay 1.
Yep.
Which is something we've been waiting on for quite a while now.
Yeah, I was about to change subjects here, but I remember we have some examples here of this actual doorway. So we know that this door has been also added on Mega Bay 1. It actually started there. And they haven't actually installed the door itself yet. But let's look at that really quick. And then BJ had some examples for us. I don't know if were you able to find one beyond the one that you sent to me?
No, what I sent you is about there was one more picture of it partially open, but Mauricio got some really good close-ups as well from his ground shots yesterday, showing some of the evolution of the track system that they've been working. That appears to be the guide track for a what they call a vertical lift fabric door, I believe is what it's referred to.
Right, so this is the guide track right here.
Yeah, and it seems like it'll be an H beam essentially, a system every 6 feet of fabric or so that will have a guide system that aligns it to one, usually in just one of those guidelines, which is what makes me think there's probably going to be two separate doors that kind of work in conjunction because of the extreme height of this doorway. But they collapse into a very small space. A couple examples I found were upwards of 60 feet of door can collapse into about 7 feet of stored space. And since a booster with hot stage ring doesn't go above that lower cross beam in the doorway, we've got a fairly sizable amount of space above there up to that cross beam to store that doorway.
Right, and there's a set of pulleys up here.
Yeah, it would be a shiv, shiv pulley, shiv block, any number of ways to describe it.
Yeah, so let me, I guess, pull up an example of that doorway, or the door itself. Actually, hold on. What did I do with that? Let me go back and pull up that example that you sent. All right. Yeah, so this is an example of those types of doors. Actually, I have a second one right here.
Yeah, that one wasn't as big of an image as I'd like, but yeah, that one kind of shows how those segments kind of collapse into each other, and can really have a minimal section view to allow that opening to be nice and big.
And are these still the same thing? Like, are these fabric?
Yeah, so they're a fabric on the inside and outside surface with essentially a steel or aluminum I-beam set sideways, so more of an H-beam look, and then at every one of those white crossbars would be a support structure that lifts everything up.
Cool, but I hate it at the same time.
Yeah, it should be something very similar to what the door on the Star Factory facing Mega Bay 1 is a similar type door. I don't think I've been able to determine whether it's a double fabric or a single fabric, but it is a soft fabric lifting door like that.
Right.
I guess
Yeah. Go ahead.
Big advantage with that type of door is it can move fast as well. So if they're constantly in and out of the bays, then yeah, this is the ideal sort of door for the job.
Yeah, and you know what? Actually, I'm going to go back to the ground shots really quick. I have mentioned this on previous weeks, but I might as well talk about it again. So I think part of that, of actually closing this space off, is that they need to be able to vent the inside of the building out. So if you're pushing air into the building with your HVAC system, then you also have to, have the ability for air to get out, or else you'll just build up positive pressure inside the building. So they installed these vents on the top of the building a few weeks ago, or a few months ago. At this point, they had to remove all of this siding on on the top and then install these vents up here. So they got that finished. It seems like they're getting close to actually installing this thing. So I don't know. I want to say it'll probably be just a few weeks before we see it, but who knows? There's probably a lot more work to do on the actual guide rails.
And basically make the most of these views whilst you still can before that door arrives.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it would be kind of cool to see how fast it actually opens and closes. I have a feeling the only time we'll actually, from the live stream views, be able to see inside is when boosters move in and out, because even when they're bringing in ring sections to the bottom to be stacked, they'll probably only lift it high enough for those rings to make it through the door. Like they'll probably raise up to this level and then just shut it again as soon as the ring section passes through. So that's going to be pretty difficult to actually know when things are happening in there.
Yeah, those doors look like the specs from the company that I was showing you there say that they can move about 30 feet per minute. They're about 6 inches a second is what they said.
Yeah, pretty quick. The cool thing about this angle, and also with the presence of these LEDs, is that we can really see the engine install stands back here, and it looks like they have. So we know that they finished this third install station a few weeks ago, and now they're installing the walkways between them, so you can see the walkway panels up here. And this is probably. I'm on the fence about this one because the way that these panels look, they're a little bit thin. But we believe they may actually pour concrete on top of this. So these are probably corrugated panels, which typically mean you're going to put concrete on top, which would make sense. So this is a really cool platform joining all three engine install stations. I believe, I can't tell where the cutout is for the stairway, if it's just right here, but I'm pretty sure they're going to go all the way across the front right there as well too. So you'll be able to walk past them on both the front and back, and on the sides as well too, which is pretty cool.
Looks like that platform that they installed a platform in between the engine install stands. You can see the ladder below. I think that stays lower, like you can walk underneath that new platform on the white platform with the stairs on it. Yeah, in under there. There's possibly a void in under there.
Yeah, we saw those two platforms that had the weird arc cutouts and whatnot, and they were definitely not all the way up at the ring level. So I think you're right that there's probably some mid-level access below.
Yeah, I would love to see what this looks like from the inside once it's finished.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, especially with the 3 boosters in a row at the back as well. That would be quite the shot.
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing about it is, well, kind of the weird thing about it is how much space it actually takes up back here. So really, in the entryway, you only really have room just to drive new ring sections in. I guess this is almost like a loading dock, you know what I mean? So like they will, drive in boosters back here on the SPMTs, lift them off, and then put them back onto the engine install stands or the actual turntables that are, I think, in the front, each front corner. I'm not actually sure if they still have them in here currently, but I believe they do have both turntables in here right now.
Yeah, they should be, but you can actually even see the foil. You can see the 8 embeds there for placing the transport stands for loading and offloading.
Yeah, I think this was for the. I don't know if these are still designed for the new transport stands or not. They must be, because they have to use those in the Rocket Garden as well too.
Yeah,
I would think the new transports as well as the thrust simulator probably all have the same mounting locations.
Yeah, they do. They all fit. They're all backwards compatible.
Yeah, I would love to see from the inside, just to see how much space there is between this turntable and the walkway. So like, I don't know if there's enough room in here to fit a ring section back here while something is on the turntable, but Yeah, I mean their space is definitely taken. Their floor space is taking a hit with these new engine install stands, I would say.
Yeah, because there's that bit of room behind the engine install stands between them and the back wall where they bring the Raptor engines from the Raptor's nest over to the engine install stands. So there's that like that laneway behind the engine install stands.
Yeah, this is really, really awesome. And I mean, it kind of gives an idea of what we should expect on the inside of the other one as well, too. They're just further behind in that process. But, the evolution is still ongoing out here. They're got tons of changes happening within the buildings, outside of the buildings, to the Star Factory, which...
all I can say is, all I can say is it's a far cry from just stacking rings in a field.
Agreed. And the last remaining the last remaining thing from that time period was this actual nose cone tent. So this is tent 3, and at this point, when Mauricio did this flyover on last Sunday, they were in the process of moving everything out of here. So all of the nose cones that were in this tent got moved into the Star Factory, and at this point, the entire tent has been demolished. So we have a few ground images, and even those are outdated, even though they were taken yesterday, because that tent is now gone. So let me go ahead and show some shots of that.
And we do actually still have one more tent left. That's quite hidden out of the way. But I should imagine it stays outnumbered as well.
Yeah, so this was probably just a few hours before they finished demolishing this. A lot of open space back there right now. But yeah, with this tent out of the way, they can obviously finish the midsection of the Star Factory, which I'm sure they've been waiting to get to for a long time now, because it's kind of been a little bit odd the way they've had to work around it. But right now, they have all of this broken down. They're going to have to move out all of the shipping containers. Maybe I'll get a better angle of that. Yeah, all of the shipping containers that are on the side. I think there's like two rows of shipping containers on top of each other. So they'll have to get rid of all those, and then they'll start breaking out all the concrete and running conduit and foundations for everything. And so, this construction, I imagine by the time they start actually erecting steel in this area, they'll already have the foundation work for the next section going. So hopefully not too many holdups when it comes to just continuing progress on it. But man, the timing of all of this is pretty awesome. And, we know at this point that the nose cone section of the building is active. I believe more of the roof is actually complete now at this point. I would have to imagine that within this week, they probably went all the way across. But from the ground shots we have seen, it's a little difficult to tell, but we have seen the nose cones inside of that building. Let's see if I can find the shot that shows it well enough.
There was a tiled barrel section too. You could see through the back door of Star Factory as well.
I don't think this is the shot that shows it. So this is looking into that side of the building. This looks like a curved nose cone section right here. But this one, they're really tough to see back here, but hopefully y'all can see the outline of one of the nose cones back there. I wish they had the lights on. There's another one right here. I think this is the same nose cone right there. So I think this is possibly 2 nose cones that we're seeing in this.
Yeah, it looks like two top halves. I think it's 2 top halves and then a bottom half there on the left.
Right.
There's another bottom half floating around in there as well somewhere.
So I guess what we're seeing there is version 2 hardware.
Some of it might be more Pathfinder stuff, but one of the bottom halves of a nose cone does actually have a label on it saying, I think it's ship 36. So yeah, I guess you could say they are working on the version 2 stuff in there. But whether it actually gets used in a flight article or not, I guess remains to be seen.
Yeah, we did see. I think it was Jack Beyer from NSF posted this week, or maybe Chris. They've spotted some of the new header tanks that are going to be used. I guess they've changed the design on the header tanks for the next version, and so we've seen some of the new hardware. I guess that's probably really the only change that has been actually noticed so far is the new header tank. Fortunately, we don't have images of that here today, but yeah, this is looking. Go ahead.
I do have a render from Nick that we might be able to use that shows where this new header tank would go.
Yeah, let's do it. Do you want to put that in live comms?
Yeah, just digging it out now.
Just while I've got a quick break, there's a couple of donations. Robert Burkett, $10. Thanks, RGV. We appreciate the amazing photos, videos, and great commentary. Thank you. And we saw Seabreeze before. That's an amazing donation. Thanks. And that's all.
Awesome. So, sorry, I was looking for this in the background too, because I know that Nick sent it to me as well too. I just can't find it.
I'll keep going. There's some gift memberships. Methane Man donated 5 memberships. Just Martin donated 5 memberships. Jim Cabot donated a membership. Who we got here? We've got William Foss donated a membership. Robert Burkett donated a membership. And that catches us all up there. Thank you. Oh, and here's Stan J also gifted a membership. So thank you very much for everyone for the donations. And just a reminder, if you want to join up as a Patreon or a YouTube member, we're going to have an after show get together and look at some more recent aerial photos. So back to you, Zach.
I've just shared the photo on the live comms channel, the render.
Yeah, so this is it right here. We got the this is from Chameleon Circuit. So this is basically what the new header tank looks like, at least the liquid oxygen one. So the previous one was basically it didn't have this little cone at the bottom. So that's really the big difference here is this cone on the bottom. And we kind of think it's just changing the shape of it so that the fluid flows better into the pipe. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. I think I'm not 100% sure on this, but I think the direction that the ship is tilted in during flight possibly causes it to gather on this side, maybe. I could be wrong about that.
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty accurate.
Yeah. So interesting new hardware for that. Like I said, we haven't really seen much new version 2 hardware other than that yet. So, first real sign that it's actually happening, though. But on that note, I guess we should mention yesterday, Elon kind of gave more hints about that version 2. And speaking specifically on the length of it, I think he said they were the total length of the ship or the full stack would end up being approaching 140 meters.
He did. He did mention 150 meters as well, but I think that's a bit more unknown right now, I think.
And the way I gathered it, he made it sound more like also that V2 was going to be upgraded for robustness and whatnot, and that the stretching probably wouldn't happen until what he referred to as a V3.
Yeah, that seems to make sense. I mean, it's kind of crazy because the current full stack is 120 meters, right? So adding an additional 20 meters onto it is pretty insane. It almost, if it all goes onto the ship, that makes the ship the same height as the booster, which will be wild, to say the least. But it's not unheard of, I guess, because, the thing about the second stage, I guess, is that like, you know, it theoretically, if they weren't trying to recover it, would probably end up being 3 stages. Your payload section would probably be separate from the second stage, I think. And so it's kind of combining 2 stages in one. So it's not that abnormal, but it is going to look kind of weird. I think that when he mentioned the possibly being 150, I have a feeling that extra 10 meters is probably for the booster, not for the ship, though. I would imagine that they won't ever actually be equal in height. That I would think that they would have to extend the booster a little bit, just to add additional fuel in order to support all that that extra mass of the ship. But yeah, I mean, tough to really speculate on that too much at this point.
Yeah, and we could also take in the 6 feet for the hot stage ring that probably isn't accounted in that first 120 meters as well. So that kind of eats into some of the proportions.
Good point. Yeah.
And whilst we're on the topic, we might as well have the ships possibly being taller by about 20 meters in the future. That pretty much puts another nail in the coffin for high bay. If the ships start getting that much taller.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I mean, well, the thing is, and I'm just gonna grab another shot of it. The high bay is tall enough for. Oh, that's not the high bay. So it is tall enough for a booster, which this would end up being as tall as. But the thing about it is the way that this lifting mechanism is designed, like they need extra headroom in order to get this above the nose cone. So that really limits how much taller you can make the ship and still use this structure.
Yeah, I think the only thing could be is if they do all the stacking in Mega Bay and do tile work or any other type of outfitting that doesn't require any bridge crane work, they could still use high bay, given the fact you wouldn't need that headroom above the vehicle.
Yeah, as long as you're doing the tile work on a transport stand, then I guess that would be true. If you're trying to do it on any other stand, I think that may not work.
Yeah,
like as long as you have to lift it, if you can maneuver it in there without lifting it, then yeah, that may work. All right, so I was stuck on this image for a while, but we didn't actually talk about it. So the Star Factory, this has been another interesting thing that we've kind of covered in a few in the past weeks, is this extra row of foundations for columns that they've been adding over here. I don't even know what to think about this at this point, but it looks like the building is expanding in this direction, that's for sure. But we don't know if it's going to be as tall as the other sections of the building or if this is something else altogether. I mean, the size of the foundations kind of suggests that it will be like heavier duty steel, kind of like what's over here. But the presence of this in general makes me think that this is like a recent change to their plans for the building.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing to look at is that the main beams that are spanning that section do overhang, which kind of leads to the fact that it's maybe a little bit more integrated from the beginning, that it was going to extend farther because all of the roof purlins and all that stuff are all hanging over as if they're going to meet up with that next section.
Oh, yeah. Let me, I guess I can get a ground shot to show what you mean.
And the other thing as well is the section on the right that obviously had temporary cladding put on the front of it. So I think the decision to extend outwards goes back probably further than we think.
Let me grab that.
Yeah, the fact that the newest segment has it integrated and that the other half wasn't is probably a design change between those two segment designs.
So you're talking about this overhang right here?
Yeah, because your main beams as well as those the purlin pieces in between definitely suggest that that's going to continue and as designed, not an afterthought.
Yeah, I guess it's what's going to be interesting to see is if they end up putting a bridge crane on the opposite side as well too, because at the current moment it doesn't look like it's going to support one. But I think that's just as simple as adding another beam up here, or another, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit narrower. I know I've heard some talk, and I think it kind of resonates with me too, that perhaps it's just a work area, whether it could be workstations that are adjacent to the main tunnel, or maybe if it's just additional space for secondary pieces that would be part of the main assemblies.
Yeah, I think one of the initial things I was considering was like somewhere to like a delivery bay or something like that, but I don't think that really makes sense.
Yeah,
Because-
and the footing size also kind of leads to the potential for bridge cranes in that bay as well. We just haven't seen any evidence of it yet.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, they've started extending these down in this direction too, so kind of looks like they'll end up going all the way to the end of this building as well. So that'll mean they end up having to take the sidewalling down again once they start this work.
And dare I say it, this may actually give hope to having a glass front in the factory again.
Yeah, I mean, we were pretty disappointed when they constructed this part of the building without the glass. So now there's a chance. Yeah, it's gonna be really cool once it's actually finished. I think this little section add-on right here puts it well over the 1 million square feet, or at least when this is completed, that will be the case. But I think what's going to be interesting to see is whether or not. So now we know it's an option to extend it in this direction. I wonder if the same is true for this side of the building. So I think it's possible that these footings could continue all the way over and end up extending the front of this building as well too.
Yeah, it's potential.
I suppose it all depends on how much access they want between Mega Bay 2 and the factory, if they go ahead and extend like that or not.
Right.
Yeah, and we've seen them in the ground images as well from yesterday that they've have started erecting the steel into that next lane, going into the third row of columns.
Yeah, one thing I've been on the lookout for, so they've started, well, they've kind of had this, maybe this is a good angle to show it from, this area for offloading. I don't know if it's really offloading or just for driving equipment through. But I was kind of hoping that we would see them move this entrance to this location. So if you drive things in through here instead of through the front like that. Because, I've just been on the lookout for, anything that resembles or that, gives hints that we'll actually see another mega bay in this area. So far, I would say probably not, but, still holding out hope. I think one of the things that probably makes it less likely to happen are these culverts right here. That kind of shrinks the size of the entrance that they can build here. So, I don't know, maybe not. But, there's always a possibility of deleting Stargate, which I don't know if they're even allowed to do. They could move Stargate up to the top of one of the bays, so that's a possibility. But yeah, I guess this building is safe for now. Hopefully, we'll see them start to move past this at some point, though. Let's see. Anything else with the star factor that we need to touch on?
That's pretty well it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Do we talk about high bay much at all?
Not really.
So yeah, we just got. I think we now got 28 being worked on in the back left. Oh god, there's been a lot of moves recently. I'm just trying to remember exactly who's in there now. I think we got 30 in there in the back right. We got 31 in the front right, I believe.
Yeah, it sounds right.
There was a lot of ship movement over a few days ago.
And we found a nose cone in the ground shots. There's a picture of the nose cone sitting behind high bay, just between high bay and that set of temporary opposites just behind there.
Yeah, it appears to be a Pathfinder that is destined for scrap based off of some of the things that we saw in that picture.
It had those little tiles on it, yeah.
I think there was a lot of talk about them being the smaller tiles on that nose cone, but I think Jack's had a bit more of a look at it, and I think he came out with the conclusion that's actually just the normal size tiles.
Right. Sorry, I was looking through some other pictures on the side here to see if we missed anything. And I don't think we have. So sorry, do we have any questions related on the Star Factory side before we move on?
Yeah, there's actually a couple of questions from Macy's earlier too, sorry. Do you think they'll need to ask permission to Mexico to static fire at Macy's? I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, we've discussed that a lot on past episodes, but what we do know is that it's most likely firing in this direction. So they're not sending steam clouds into Mexico. But you are still loading methane onto a ship, which in itself is dangerous. So I don't know. I'm sure there is some coordination on the Mexican side about what happens during those testings, since there's landowner property right here. But we have not actually heard anything about that. So really anything we can say on is speculation.
Yeah, I'm pretty adamant there's going to have to be some sort of regulatory stuff going on here, which is why I think it's still going to be quite a while until we actually see ship static fires at Massie's. It's not just about the construction, but obviously, the regulatory side of things as well.
Cool. And Sandeep Kanyo asks, is there any chance of full duration static fires at Macy's?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say like full duration, like full flight duration, because they're going to be limited on how much methane they actually have here. So I don't think they can load a full tank of methane with just these. I mean, I don't know. It is possible because it's not. The methane tank isn't quite as tall as the whole front half of the vehicle, so it's possible. I mean, I would think it's a good thing to perform longer duration static fire tests, which is part of the benefit of having a flame trench. There is also probably going to be some sort of water system inside of this as well too. So yeah, I think we'll probably see longer duration tests at some point.
Okay, and on to Sanchez. Mark asked, why is Remedio's road closed, and do you know for how long?
It's closed because it's abandoned. Yeah, it's abandoned. SpaceX abandoned the road, or I guess the county abandoned the road, and so this has been in the works for a long time, trying to close this road off. And so it's essentially SpaceX property now. And as far as how long, I would say forever.
And how much longer before Tiki Bar goes away? Michelle Nichols asks.
The one in the high bay?
No, the one you got in the photo there, right to your left, your cursor. A little,
Frank's.
Yeah,
Frank's house.
Wait, that's not the Tiki Bar, is it?
Yeah, that's Tiki Bar.
Oh, okay. Yeah, good question. I don't know. I mean, I don't see why it would go away. I don't know what else they would put there, but I mean, they've
another bay.
got a nice front yard or full surrounding yard. I don't think this is going to go away. I think this is part of like where they do their presentations, like the presentation that they did the other day. They do it on this little grass field right here. I'm sure they have people sitting back here during that as well too. So I don't know. I don't see a reason for it to go away.
Cool. And Pete Long asked, do we know where the sections of the crane are going from the ring yard, I guess?
Well, currently a lot of them are sitting out here. Some of them have been loaded on trucks and taken away. But we do not know where they're actually going. So the weird thing about this crane is that does have SpaceX logos on the side of the cab. So presumably they plan on continuing. So this is a Buckner crane, but with SpaceX logos on it. So presumably it's never going to not be doing work for SpaceX. So I imagine it may move potentially back to KSC for a while, even though they aren't really doing any work down there currently. But yeah, I mean, kind of one of those things we have to keep our eyes out on. We've seen them completely disassemble it, so it's not like they're going to, move it somewhere else. But when I say somewhere else on site. So yeah, we don't really know the answer to that one currently.
Cool. And our generous donator, Seabreeze, asked, do we know what side of Mega Bay 2 the Raptor roost or the Raptor nest will end up? Thanks, he says.
For Mega Bay 2, I think it's on the right hand. So on the right hand side in this photo. The reasoning for that is we noticed a little while ago there was a load of conduit running around to that side of the building, which makes me think, yeah, there's going to be another structure put up on that side. Plus, it'd be kind of awkward to have the Raptor storage on the back of Mega Bay 2, just simply due to the lack of land they got to work with there.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if there's a backside shot of this that may show it enough. I can't really see the bottom here. Let's see. This is a good one. Yeah, so, I mean, potentially they could make it so that it's not as deep as this one is, and, make it so it's not as deep, and then they'll still have room to drive behind it. But, yeah, I mean, right now they do have a bunch of... Is the conduit sticking out of the ground right here?
Yeah,
I think it is. And it runs around the back side of the building under here, so I don't know. At the same time, that conduit could just be for another office like these. So it's tough to say for sure.
I don't know.
Okay.
I feel like I speculate that they're not. I don't even think that Mega Bay 2 will have its own. With the limited numbers on a ship, I could see them just forking them over from the other one, since they already have other maintenance facilities in there for all the booster ones.
Okay, cool. And Crane Man asked, is that large white beam on the right of Mega Bay 2 on the ground, is that meant for the door frame of Mega Bay 2? I think you might look at a front photo of it to find that.
Yeah, it was just off there, and I do believe I believe that's the header beam. It's that's for the top of the side. He might be talking about the big one that's next to the Star Factory. It's the double beam. You can see the end of it poking out there, but it is the header for the doorway.
Hold on, let me get it better. This one?
Yeah, that one. I believe that's what the one he's referring to.
Cool. Any other questions?
Can we please, Michelle Nichols asked, can we show where Maria's house is or was and Ray's shop to give them credit for being part of this from the very beginning? Well, that's nice, Michelle.
Yeah, so Maria has her property. Well, it was her property. I don't know if she wants people actually knowing where her actual house is, so I'm not going to show the house, but I will show the property itself if I have a view of it. Maybe switch to the village. That might be a good. Yeah. So it was basically this one. This one right here, I believe.
Yeah, that was originally her house. So you're correct, that was originally a house, yep.
Yeah, so yeah, this was it right here. And then she has a house in the village, but that's still her property, so I'm not gonna show that one because I don't want, people pulling up outside of her house. So yeah, well, one thing I just noticed in this image, which is interesting, looks like they've drilled a bunch of holes in this thing, like they're about to remove all this concrete.
Yep. More development work. And Crayman asked, could they use high bay just for storage of boosters? I mean, anything's possible, I guess, isn't it?
Say that again.
Is high bay could be used just for storage of boosters, perhaps?
You wouldn't get a
doubt
lot of
that.
storage in there, really.
Yeah, the problem with boosters is they have the grid fins on them, so they take up slightly more floor space in the ship, even though the ship has flaps. Like, I think the floor space required for a booster is higher than what it is for a ship.
Cool.
Plus the other thing is we're expecting to see a lot more ships than boosters. So if anything was going to be stored in there, it'd be ships.
Question from K. Pretend Flam. During a recent talk, Kathy Lauders mentioned a new Starbase office building to be built in 2024. Any idea where it's located? I'm not sure, unless they're talking about the office space above Mega Bay 2.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the first ones. First time I've heard about that, I think. So I'm not 100% sure either.
And that'll do for questions. Thanks, Zach. Onward and upward.
I guess we'll just do a brief glance at the village really quick and just check in on all the new housing that they got down there. They've been bringing in more and more of these tiny homes, so this village is almost fully completed. That's a bunch of them down there. It's pretty packed space. So they're no longer doing these the Airstream trailers, so everything's going to be tiny homes or actual houses right there. I think these are more for like temporary workers, or like people who aren't actually living up here but just need to stay for a few days type thing. Same with these back here, but these are probably more for actual SpaceX workers versus contractors over here. So yeah, they're making tons of progress down there. This village is filling up pretty quickly, and on the backside over here, not really much to talk about, but they did finally finish removing everything that was in the back over here, and looks like they're putting a driveway to go all the way around to the backside. So will be interesting to see what they end up doing with this space after that. I have a feeling it would be interesting to see the HLS nose cone come back over here, but again, I think that's something that should be inside of the Star Factory. I think they're leaving it outside on purpose just so people can see it. But I would imagine that, while they're actually working on it, it makes more sense for it to be in the Star Factory instead of out here. All right. I think that kind of covers everything down on this area. Still doing groundwork over here where the solar panels used to be, but that's almost I think these are still the solar panels here. So I don't know. We're kind of wondering if they're going to go on top of the Star Factory, which is a big question still. It's the only reason that makes sense to still have them here, but yeah, we have no idea on that one yet. I imagine somebody was probably going to ask that question though. Anything else down here before we go to the launch site?
Just a few gifted memberships here. Hang on. Jax has gifted JACQS has gifted a membership. We've got 55 Chevy Steve gifted a membership. Thank you very much. Rocket Prophet gifted a membership. Thank you very much. And that's all that. Thank you.
Awesome. So yeah, let's go ahead over to the launch site. So yeah, I think now is probably a good time to mention the other thing that Elon talked about during his presentation yesterday, which was related to the failure of the Starship, or the RUD of S-25. I guess we probably could have talked about that at the ring yard. But yeah, so we've been waiting for information on what actually happened with that, and he finally mentioned what the cause of it was. So I guess they were releasing liquid oxygen out of one of the vents, and that ended up causing a fire somewhere on the actual ship. And that fire resulted in the destruction of the ship. So he kind of joked about it a little bit, saying that, had they had a payload, that wouldn't have happened. And that part was a little confusing. I think that may be related to the additional like fuel consumption that would have happened had they been carrying a payload, but I'm not really sure. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what he's alluding to, is the fact that with additional mass at liftoff, they would have just consumed more of the propellants and then wouldn't have had them to get rid of before any other milestones that they were trying to shoot for.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, it's nice to see that it wasn't something obviously a lot more sinister, but obviously at the same time, it's frustrating because knowing how close they actually became to getting the ship where it needed to go.
I mean, that gives a lot of confidence for the next launch, though. I mean, I think that we should expect to definitely see them reach orbit next time. And I think another thing that I don't know if he actually confirmed this. I haven't listened to the full thing yet myself. Just I'm kind of busy with other things. But I think he did mention that I know he said that they plan to deploy payload before the end of 2024. But I don't know if he actually said that they're planning to test the door for the next launch.
Yeah, he did. The 3 milestone, yeah, door, transfer, and an in-flight burn were the 3 things that he did say were for Flight 3.
Okay.
Not the door with a payload, but just opening and closing of the door on its own in space.
I wonder like how much use that is if you don't actually like, why not test the dispensing mechanism as well too? I feel like that almost implies that they'll be carrying at least a dummy payload.
Yeah, I mean, he said they would test out the mechanism, but I'd be surprised if there's no actual satellites on there. Even if they're literally just going to be chucked away straight away in space. But yeah, I'd be very surprised if there's nothing.
I feel like the thing for us to be on the lookout for is, and I actually went to the wrong image, I guess, would be for the Pez dispenser to be rolled out to the high bay sometime soon. But that, speaking of the Pez dispenser, it was outside for a very long time.
Yeah, it's been inside the building for the last probably 2, maybe 3 weeks, I think.
It'd be interesting if they were preparing it to actually, putting their dummy payload in there so they can load them onto the ship. And another thing that they've moved over here, there's this little adapter right here, which I think allows it to nestle up against the side of the ship a little bit better. So they have moved this over here too. It'll be interesting to keep our eyes on this to see if they install that soon, because that would be a good indication that they're actually planning to use that. But I imagine that would probably happen within the next week or so if they actually plan to finish that, adding that onto the as dispenser loader. So back to Suborbital. I think this is a great view showing that new SpaceX sign. They did get this. They have turned it on, so they've got all the lights connected now, and pretty much done with this entrance, other than the little security box.
I think we do actually have ground shots. They have put windows on that now. I think it is close to being. Yeah, it's close to coming into operation.
I'll grab some ground shots of that. Those might be towards the end, right? So this is to the right of the door. I don't see the shots showing the side of the door.
Yeah, I've seen there's some photos, but I don't see one from Mauricio's adventure out there yesterday.
Yeah. Well, we can see it from the air, kind of. So, yeah, that's kind of cool, though. It's interesting placement for it, and having this on here in the first place, because they're just limited with how large of equipment can move through there. Obviously, you're not going to be bringing a booster or ship through there. But I mean, to me, this kind of looks like it's now their main, possibly just construction entrance, or at least for the parking lot, I guess. So you now have basically 2 security stations entering the site. Yeah, so I've seen in the chat folks have been asking like where the next launch pad is going to be, and I don't know. I think that the days on the Suborbital site for the Suborbital pad are limited. We've already had the test stand A removed. I think test stand B will probably be going soon. But the thing about test stand B is they've actually done a little bit of work on it over the last week or so, which y'all can see in this shot. They cut out all of the concrete underneath it. I'm guessing after, I don't know, 10 to 15 static fires on this, they finally reached the point where they had to replace it. So we saw them bring in a special concrete truck or special mixing truck late in the week, and a bunch of bags of Fondag, which is the stuff that was originally installed into the launch mount. And now they've replaced this pad, so that's at least a sign that they're going to use it at least one more time. We'll see how long it lasts, though.
Yeah, I think we'll see, probably at least another 3 ships, and that's my speculation, until they can finally move over to Massie's.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because we know that that obviously the groundwork for the next tower is probably going to begin after the next launch. So it'll be interesting to see like how much of this stuff actually stays down here. Imagine, this has got to be in the way of whatever where the next tower is going to be. Like, we don't know exactly where it'll be at, but I'm assuming it'll be somewhere in this area down here. So, I mean, you would think that this is one of the first things that would have to go. I'm excited for those days, though, because it's going to be like a return to 2021, watching all of that construction work. So it's going to be pretty exciting.
Absolutely.
Not a ton else to talk about, I guess, at the Suborbital side, but most of the work this week has been over at the orbital tank farm, which has been quite a shocker in some ways. I guess we weren't sure whether or not this work was going to happen before or after the third launch, and so one of the problems with this was that the tank shell that was originally right here had some pretty severe dents on the side of it that they tried to fix with additional bracing. That didn't work, and so it was kind of clear that it wasn't going to last through the next launch. So they removed that tank, and I think for a while we kind of thought that they may continue to use this water tank without the shell, but I feel like that was never really a good idea, because the reason these tanks haven't gotten damaged is because they have insulation on the inside of them, so that pretty much prevented them from being completely caved in inwards, because there's nothing to cave in. The space is like filled, and this is just a regular water tank, which puts it at risk of receiving the same kind of damage that happened to these tanks. So probably good to just not use it anymore. So at this point, had removed the they started off with the old water tank, then they moved the tank shell, and they also scrapped the water tank itself. So all of this is gone at this point. You can see that when they originally removed it, they cut the bottom ring off before they lifted that out, and then they removed this separately. So I think it was like the day after this flyover, they removed this the base of the water tank, and so this is just a clear pad right now. They still have to remove the base of this, so I think they have equipment back there breaking out this concrete base right now. Jake or BJ, Stephanie, have y'all seen that?
Yeah, we haven't other than seeing them crane a mini excavator with a hammer on it into that general vicinity. We haven't, until we see some additional flyovers to get confirmation, but it certainly suggests that.
Yeah. So, I mean, they definitely need this space. And I think that's it's like a two-part thing where, number one, the tank's damaged, but number two, they need this space quickly. So, I've kind of explained this a few times, mostly on. Actually, I did explain it last time I was on the show. The function of these water tanks being like a critical part of this actual tank farm. And so basically, we're expecting that this area will be filled with vaporizers in order to be able to supply gas to these the remaining liquid oxygen tanks and eventually all of the new horizontal tanks. So basically, it's called a pressure building system, which essentially, as you're draining these tanks, you have to refill them or backfill them with gas in order to maintain head pressure, but also to prevent them from like collapsing on themselves. So the only real space for them is where these two tanks were located, and now that they have those removed, they should be able to start that part of the construction work. So they had at this point delivered two of the vaporizers, the new vaporizers, and I'm gonna have to find the view that shows them well. They actually hid them, and initially this was kind of a bit confusing what was going on here, but you can see them on the ground underneath these tanks. So I was kind of confused. First saw this thinking that maybe they decided to install them here underneath the tanks, but these things are designed to be verticals, so this is just a temporary location to kind of get them out of the way. But as of this morning, we saw it's hard to tell. It could have been 2, but it also could have been 8 new vaporizers that they delivered.
Yeah, it did seem to be 2 on that trailer, but I agree it's hard to tell.
Yeah, I think I have I posted it this morning shortly before the show, so I may be able to just show that really quick. I mean, it's not all that exciting, but let's see here. Yeah, so I think this is 2 of them, actually. You're right. So these are basically what I was talking about, what we're expecting them to replace the water tanks with in order to do that same function. And the size of this vaporizer farm will kind of put into perspective how convenient it was using the water tanks for that other purpose, because I think it was a lot more, in my opinion, like slightly more sophisticated, but also more compact. But now we're going to see all these vaporizers all over the place, and I think they won't be able to fit what they need in that area. So the next ones will probably have to go where this water tank is, but that probably will not happen until after Flight 3. But imagine they're wanting to get to work on that pretty quickly, so they've already started that, and y'all can see the scrap work that they've had going down here, just taking apart, cutting up these pieces. This is a really awesome shot of that.
Yeah, I think the last container full of scrap metal left late yesterday, I think. So they're pretty much done with all that now.
Yeah, less than a week, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's worth mentioning as well that there was actually damage to the GSE-7 cryocell as well, even though there was a whole other tank in front of it.
Right. Let me see if I can find the right angle to show that. Well, that's definitely not it. It's tough to see. Maybe I need
Yeah, in the ground photos, it was really interesting to see some of the pebbling that we saw that almost looked like from Flight 1 debris that came and maybe ricocheted off the original water tank and actually impacted the internal surfaces of 7's shell.
Oh, here's a good one. Yeah, that's a pretty decent dent right there.
I was quite shocked when I first saw that, just how much damage there was to that shell.
Yeah, I feel like the pressure waves from the long duration static fire really helped. I mean, I'm sure it was partially dented before that, but the extra damage we saw on the shell for GSE-8 after the static fire definitely seemed like that 10 seconds of pressure wave was not friendly.
It just shows you how the pressure waves can travel around corners and go around behind things.
Yeah, I would say that damage is pretty impressive.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
We've seen
go
that
ahead.
before, like at the explosive bunker. There was damage behind the explosive bunker, like the pressure wave went over the top of the bunker and hit it from behind. So it's really amazing how these acoustic energy waves actually move around the place unexpectedly.
Yeah, agreed. It's I mean these horizontal tanks should do a lot better, especially having the wall in front of them. Obviously, it'll probably still go over the wall to some degree, but yeah, I mean it's interesting. I think that these walls won't, if they don't get knocked over, I'm surprised they don't have like a ramp in front of them, because the wave is basically just going to hit the side of the wall. So there's going to be a lot of force on that wall. But I guess one other thing to mention down here, I don't know if they did this before or after the last show, but they did get the tank that was missing between these two installed. And I don't know, it's tough to say just based off of this, but I think the gaps between these suggest that these four are connected together and these five. So I think it'll be 4 and 5, which kind of makes sense anyways. But yeah, if, in that case, I would say that these 4 are liquid nitrogen, and then these 5 over here will be liquid oxygen. And knowing that, and also assuming that these tanks are going to be the same size, I think we can probably start to get an estimation of the total volume and kind of compare that to what the original tank farm is. So maybe next episode we'll have some more numbers to like put to that. But we have seen the SPMTs that were used to put these into position have arrived back at the launch site. So it seems like more tanks are going to be arriving within the next few days. I wouldn't actually be surprised to see them arrive over the weekend, since those SPMTs are already on site. They usually don't move them unless they're ready to use them. So we'll probably see those arriving sometime soon. And it's actually really cool the way that they're just the perfect width to fit in between these. So they don't have to use a crane to actually drive these in, to actually lift these in here. They just roll through on the SPMTs between the actual pedestals. So
what, SpaceX thought ahead, do you think? Actually planned ahead for once.
Yeah, I mean the spacing of the embeds is like just perfect for SPMTs. So I mean, you know, the size of the tanks had to also be perfect for that, or else they'd probably be using a crane like they did for all of these. It wasn't really possible to do that same thing.
Yeah. Just on that sound wave, Yazata in chat said the pressure waves from the static fire videos were amazing. You could actually see the sound, and that's very true.
Yeah, that was the booster static fire fly or aerial shot from the drone is probably my favorite static fire video for sure. The ship one was my favorite for a little bit, but I think that one kind of tops it for me.
Absolutely, same.
So the other thing is, I guess, without these water tanks, they're going to need additional water tanks for the Firex and detonation suppression system on the launch mount. So we may already have those on site. I'm not sure. It's possible that this could be a vertical water tank right here, although it kind of looks like it's either meant for cryo fluid or gas. But we also saw a new smaller tank delivered this week, which is currently behind this building, and I'm going to have to pull up some ground shots for that. Let's see.
Yeah, and as per SpaceX, it's an older second-hand tank as well.
Is it?
Oh, it looks pretty old and second-hand. There's another shot of it side on.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I didn't even notice it was in this picture. I was gonna get side shot. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I guess it does look used. But yeah, I mean, I think this maybe just be its like little temporary spot to keep it out of the way. But it definitely looks like a water tank. So this could be what they replace functionality of the other water tanks as far as it relates to the launch mount. So this kind of gives you an idea. I'm assuming there'll be two of these possibly, but if it's just one, this gives you an idea of how much water from the actual original water tanks was being used for the Firex or the detonation suppression system versus for the pressure building system for the GSE tanks. So super small amount of water in comparison to the amount of volume needed to run that other system. But while we're here, I think this is, I'm guessing, probably been mentioned on past shows, but they started removing the driveway that goes to the box where they hold the FTS charges at. Man, this thing is like definitely seen better days. It's funny to me storing explosives in a location like this.
Yeah, I mean, I still don't really understand why this isn't some sort of concrete bunker instead. It's
Yeah,
just
I'm trying to
not.
show it from the air. Hold on. Let's see if I can. Yeah, this gives a better shot of it.
Yeah, she's beat up, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's not uncommon for explosive bunkers to be in containers like that and there's the ATF rules require certain setbacks to other structures and things. There's a whole orange, what they call the orange book, in terms of the minimum requirements of construction and safety and whatnot. So it's both odd and somewhat logical too.
Yeah, I don't know if that rule book considers proximity to the world's most powerful rocket.
That is very true. Very true.
But yeah, I mean, I guess this little, I mean, I forgot what these are called. HESCO barriers did
Yeah.
a decent job of protecting it, but there's a lot of debris flying, even with the water system, and obviously the steam cloud and pressure wave. So that did do a little bit of damage to it, but yeah, it looks like they're breaking all that out. I don't know if they're gonna build another pathway here. I don't think the pathway was even really damaged, so I think something else is going on down here. Just removing it all together. Let's see, what else do we got? Oh. Yeah, so we do know that the oxygen side of the tank farm has been completed. Obviously, when they did the static fire test on booster 10, that kind of made that clear. But they're still doing work covering up all the pipes and adding the insulation. And over this last week, they've actually changed out the flex hoses on. Oh, you can actually see a missing one here. So they removed some of the flex hoses on the back of these pumps and they replaced them. This must have been the pump that got replaced, actually, right here.
Yeah, the middle one is the one that was replaced just after this flyover.
That's what I thought that piece of plumbing was missing for, but what you're saying there about the flex pipes, that makes a lot of sense as well. Thanks, I didn't see that.
Yeah, so this is really cool. I mean, the way that they redid this, they actually have kind of changed this up. Ryan pointed this out to me last week while I wasn't on their show, that this appears to be set up now so that a portion of the pumps, possibly just this one, and I think it's actually 2 pumps for the ship and 3 for the booster, but they can also switch it to do 4 for the booster and 1 for the ship. But this appears to be divided up so that these heat exchangers are basically for sending propellant to the ship, and these ones are for the booster. So instead of doing all of them out of the same bank of heat exchangers and then separating them inside of the fluids bunker, they're actually running them separately now. So that'll be interesting. I don't know if we'll actually notice a difference other than it just being faster in general. But it is cool that they've actually separated that out.
And that basically answers the question of why we haven't seen those other 2 hippos active yet during tests of B10 and the GSE testing.
Right.
Just simply because there's been no reason to actually use them yet.
Very true.
There's been some changes to the plumbing just outside the bunker as well, on the left a little bit higher, where the pipes come out of the bunker, which also supports that about the plumbing being changed so that it goes to the tower separate to the OLM for the ship and booster, like you're saying. Yeah, that plumbing has been changed if you look at older photos.
I don't have older images on hand to directly compare it, but yeah, somehow they managed to do this without it being as obvious as far as like having a. Well, there's trenches down here, so I'm guessing they just uncovered the trenches when they did this, but they did it quick enough that it wasn't visible during the flyover. So this image right here, or this view of it, is kind of really the only way that we can actually tell that they switched those out. So that went pretty quickly.
And there was a pipe in the vaults right next to the LOX tanks on that two hippos, on where the two hippos are. That was originally put in there but never ever used, and now they're using it now since they've done these upgrades. It's sort of adjacent to where the two hippos in that vault, just to the left of the two hippos. There's one of those pipes that now was installed originally and not used, and now since all these upgrades, it's being used.
Oh, so yeah, I think it was just the liquid nitrogen supply for back here. They pre-installed that for whenever they were going to install these. I don't think it's in view very well here, but yeah.
Before we move on from the lock side, if you want to get a ground photo of the manifolds by the hippos with a little roof over the top of them, there's been an interesting little development inside of there. I don't know if BJ wants to talk about it at all. So I think he was the one that pointed it out to me the other day.
Yeah, we just noticed it. I kind of noticed it a little bit in our first flyovers, that it seemed like that roof was a little strong for just being a protector. But we've noticed in some ground photos over the last week or so that there's actually bridge crane rails set up in there to have some form of it. It may just be manual hoists as well. It may not be fully electric, but for the ability to remove the basket strainers or swap out valve assemblies, any type of maintenance that they need to do under there, since it's now covered up and inaccessible to cranes.
These rails right here.
Yeah, so we don't actually have any the structural trolley beams or anything, but there's obviously going to be some form of mechanical bridge rails in there for electric or manual bridge cranes.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'm sure we'll probably see those arrive soon. That's kind of a weird thing about having to put this over there, like you're saying, not being able to access it with cranes anymore. Cool. So what else do we have? Let's I guess move over to the actual launch mount itself, where, as y'all can see, they still have all the scaffolding up. They've been doing a lot of work up here, and this is one of those things that relates to rapid reusability, as far as I'm concerned. This has been interesting to. I mean, we were expecting this to happen at some point, but I don't know. I think I'm lost here. Wow. Let me get a good shot of it from this side. So you can kind of see why this is necessary before I even start talking about it. Half of the launch mount is a lot more charred than the other half, and that's just a result of the pad avoidance maneuver. So when they tilt away from the pad, then the flame stops going through the center and starts going over the edge of the actual launch mount. So over the last few weeks, or ever since booster 10 was removed from the launch mount after its static fire, they've been busy up here. So you can see the scaffolding on the inside on the work platform. And it's a bit difficult to see what they're doing down there, but we can see that there's some bare spots on the wall over here, where you can see like black from it being charred, and then there's like more rusted spot right here. So essentially there's burn panels that are installed inside of here, which are meant to be replaceable. And I do have a good render for this. I actually showed it in one of my episodes a few months ago. Well, probably like 6 months ago at this point. But these are renders from Ryan Hansen Space that show what these burn panels look like. So they basically attach to the inside wall of the launch mount. So these are basically what's being removed. And if you look at that again from this angle, you can kind of make that out now. The little L shape down here. So it seems like most of them are being replaced, which is interesting because they've only done 2 launches from here. I don't think these really get damaged during static fire tests. It's only during the actual launch itself. So those are being replaced. I'm hoping that in the future launches they'll survive more than 2 launches. But if you increase the thrust from the booster or from the Raptors on Raptor 3 and 4 or whatever, I would imagine that they may continue to have that issue where these things are actually getting ablated away by those outer 20 engines. So that's interesting and slightly concerning in my opinion. I wonder how they'll improve that in the future. Like I said, they're made to be replaceable, but I don't know if replacing after every other launch is really what they want. So I don't know. We'll see if they end up upgrading those in the future, but it's going to be tough to tell because this is going to be really the best angle that we have of it. But beyond that, there's other burn panels that are also located on the roof out here. So again, going back to that animation, we can see what the panels on the top of the roof look like. So these actually cover the conduit for the cameras that are down here. But yeah, this is basically what those panels look like on top of the launch mount. And I need to go all the way back to Sanchez. So we kind of first noticed that they were doing this from these Sanchez images, but you can see down here that they have replacement panels. So these are what those panels look like on top of the launch mount. They have holes in them so that you can actually weld them down to the top deck through those holes. And that also makes it a bit of a task to replace them. So not only are you having to cut them apart from each other, but you're also having to cut out those welds on the inside of all of those holes. And so that's one thing that they've been working on over the past week or so, is getting those panels removed. It's honestly kind of tough to tell in this if they're even still present. I think they are though. But I think as of last night, BJ, or was it Jake? One of you were saying that they started lifting in the new panels last night.
Yeah, from the crane angles, kind of triangulating it from a couple of different of the cameras, it looked like they had replaced at least one panel to the left of the BQD from that previous picture. I think they were both to that side based off of where the boom was sitting, but I think we've determined that potentially both sides had ones prepped in Sanchez. It's just a matter of when and where they put them in.
Yeah, you can almost see the holes in here where they're, I think that's what that is. Those holes, and they're cutting out the edges on the inside of the holes.
Wasn't there some talk or speculation they might use a water jacket up there, or was that just speculation?
It wasn't speculation. It was something suggested by Elon for what they would do in the future.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's, that does get into something that he said yesterday as well, which was that he said that while they're operating from one launch pad, they'll be upgrading the other one. And so that kind of is something that we've been expecting anyways, was that once the next launch tower is completed, this one will be shut down for a while as they perform upgrades on it. So I think we should expect the next launch pad to be slightly different than this one. And one of those differences will probably be with a water-cooled surface on the top as well too. So if that's the case, not only will that protect the actual top surface, but it may also protect the sidewalls down here. So that'll be really interesting to see, and that's going to be a pretty major upgrade. One thing I'm expecting to be a little bit different with the next launch mount is, I guess, choice of material. In particular, these panels up here are stainless steel. These outer panels are stainless steel, and these ones are not. So you can definitely tell that just by looking at them that these are different grades of steel. And so part of the problem with that, beyond the fact that these ones are more likely to be rusted, is that different types of steel are going to have different coefficients of expansion. What is that the correct? Yeah. So, as you heat these up, they're going to expand at different rates. And when they cool down, they're also going to contract at different rates. So when that happens, you can imagine this expanding faster than this is expanding. That could theoretically crack the welds that are up here. And I would not be surprised if that's already happened. So it's tough to really see if they've been having to shave these away and redo the welds. But we have seen that happen on the flame deflectors down here. So I would imagine it's probably also happened up here as well too. So I think, they'll probably do material selection a little bit different on the next launch mount, which will make it interesting for this one because, I would think that they would end up replacing almost the entire top surface of this and potentially even the shielding itself when they upgrade it. So it's going to be a pretty big job, and I'm also excited for that job once it actually happens.
Certainly will be. Yep.
But overall, I would say other than that, the condition seems to be pretty decent for this launch pad. I mean, the fondag is extremely charred, but it's doesn't look like it's broken away as far as we can tell, so that's good.
The fondag under pad B, we think got a bit damaged last time. They've been replacing fondag over there, but yeah, nothing around the OLM here. It all seemed to survive quite well.
Yeah. One thing that we have not mentioned, I guess, related to, well, it's kind of related to this, just because I consider all of this the launch pad. But I'm sure was mentioned on the last show, this foundation that's going in over here. So they had plumbing in the ground underneath this foundation, which kind of was the first hint that this may be some sort of restroom area. And I think that that's most likely what's happening here is that, if you want on-site facilities like restrooms, ideally you don't want to have to remove them every time there's a launch. So like if you have, porter potties or the actual trailers that they have, those have to get moved back and forth during every launch. But if you have an actual bunker that has restrooms in it, then this is like a permanent facility that kind of reduces the amount of work that they have to do when they're clearing the pad for launch. And also on that note, pretty soon they're going to be constructing another launch site over here. So in my opinion, that's probably some preparation for that, as you want to have all your, a break room / restroom facility for construction when you start that other pad.
And if you're feeling brave enough, these can double up as field of heat seats during each launch.
Say that again?
I said if you're feeling brave enough, these can double up as field of heat seats during launches.
Man, yeah, that would be. I don't know if you could. I don't know if you could stay inside of that building when there's a launch, but yeah, that would be interesting.
There's a ground shot that's got the box formwork and steel Rio bar up for the concrete walls for that little building as well already now. And yeah, it looks like a very, very solid building.
Let's see.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so since Mauricio did that flyover, they've started actually forming up those walls. I think this is a better shot right here. So,
and it looks like it's going taller because of the formwork, the Rio bars sticking out the top. so it could be quite tall. Or is that a perspective thing?
I think it could be tall, but I also think that they're probably constructing it similar to how that comms bunker over in Sanchez has been built, where they'll likely have the concrete walls go all the way up, and then the roof will be within that perimeter for strength, and then essentially the walls will be partial parapet above the roof line.
Well, that makes sense. Yep.
Because we've also seen in the flyover, we saw the locations for a number of footings for where there's probably a steel structure to do any internal walls and roof structuring.
Yeah, there's some deeper footings in amongst that concrete. Yeah, there's like 4 decent sized pads. We might see a column in there, perhaps.
Yeah, so that's going to be interesting. I think that this is something that they've been waiting to finish for like months now, but they had to work around testing at the launch site. So, yeah, they're finally getting that done. And I think this is, like I said, preparation work for what we're going to see, all the construction work we're going to see after Flight 3.
There was,
Go ahead.
There was another little small development around there as well. So around the flame deflector farm, they dug a little trench a while ago, but then now it seems they've filled it in. And on one end, near the vaporizer, it looks like there's possibly new conduit coming out of that trench. See the little stubs coming out? You go up a bit, there. Not 100% sure what it's going to be for. Maybe it's something to do with that new building.
Conduit that's going to this building. I'm surprised it doesn't go all the way over, but...
Well, remember there's that small mobile bunker that was brought in a couple of days ago. It's in those ground shots that is right into that cutout right next to the conduit. So potentially that's related.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably it.
Oh, this one?
Yeah, that little mobile one came in, and looks like it's right about in that cutout where we can kind of see the framework of the cutouts.
Yeah, I wonder what that's actually for.
And will it get pushed across the launch site next time they do a launch or a static fire?
Hopefully not. Well, did we have any questions related to the launch site that we haven't touched on? I don't think we've answered any questions since we got to launch site.
No, first with some donations. $1.99 from Jeff S. Jones. How tall and wide are the Mega Bay doors? Well, they're very tall. Go ahead.
I don't know. I think we have exact dimensions on them, or we probably do. I don't have them on hand.
And a question from Andre Soiza. I probably pronounced that wrong. $5. More mass means less G-force on Starship? ? I think we're getting. That might be related to what you're saying about the extra oxygen on board the Flight 2, and he might have confused something you said there. I'm not sure if you want to approach that.
Wait, what was the question again?
I say, does more mass mean less G-force on the Starship? ?
No.
I guess because it's accelerating slower because there's more mass. I guess the acceleration will be slightly less.
The acceleration, by the time they do that, they'll be on Raptor 3, so they'll have more thrust, so it'll theoretically be the same, if not greater.
Okay, and a question I answered earlier in chat anyway was, have they connected the new tanks? And no, they haven't yet. They've started to run some pipe work. And from George, Forge Gamer, what will be the first indications that we'll see that expansion of land? Senti asked a question, do we know if he asked the question, where is the tower located in the last known official plans in SpaceX? So remember there was those overlays, there was all that expansion away from Highway 4. But at this stage, it doesn't look like they're going to use that, does it? It looks like they're going to use the suborbital tank farm area, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to say right now. I mean, because they haven't started any groundwork, but the other tower was supposed to be located in this area right here.
Yeah.
And yeah, that requires a lot more groundwork. So I guess as far as what the first indication will be, it will be groundwork.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see them start bringing in dirt or taking out sand. So yeah, that'll be the first sign if they do put it in this direction. But I guess we would maybe see some documentation from the Army Corps of Engineers before that, which we haven't seen yet. So, given that the work that they've done so far over here to remove Pad A right now kind of suggests that they're going to go with the available space that they have and put it in this area.
Thank you very much. Just a reminder that after the show, we're having an after show and tell for Patreon members and YouTube members, so it'd be a good opportunity for you to join up there. And today, it seems like the TFR has some changes in the rules, and Mauricio's going to fly at 8,000 feet today. So that's something new.
Oh, wow.
And that's all from this end. Thank you, Jack.
Awesome. Well, I guess if we don't have any more questions, we are about 40 minutes over our time, and I guess we'll end the show here. I'm always happy to do these shows every week. Glad that we had everybody else with us. Jake, BJ, Stephanie, thank you all for being here. And as Stephanie said, Mauricio just finished up with that flyover, so he'll be doing a show and tell here soon on Discord. So those of you who want to join, feel free to join if you're already a member. If you've, especially all of you who got gifted memberships today, that should allow you to join for that show and tell a bit later. And anybody who wants to join as either a YouTube member or a member on Patreon, that you'll also get access to it by doing that. Until then, we will probably show those photos next week on the next Starbase Weekly show, and I imagine there's a chance Mauricio will probably try and fit in another flyover during the week, just so that the shots aren't 6 days old. But that's all weather dependent, so hopefully we'll just keep our fingers crossed and see what happens there. But in the meantime, I'm signing off, and I will pass this off to Jake.
Yeah, it's been another fun show. And yeah, as you can see, it's been quite a lot going on recently, and I can't imagine that's going to slow down anytime soon. It's all up from here. And yeah, I hope to see you all again quite soon. With that, I'll pass it off to BJ.
Yeah, thanks for joining us for another week of great images, and looking really forward to later today to see what we haven't seen in the last week from the newest aerial photos. So with that, looking forward to next week, and back to Stephanie.
Thank you all for joining us today. It's been a great show. We've had over 1,500 people in chat today, which is awesome. So that's it, a wrap up episode 103. So most engine cutoff, stage separation confirmed. Love you all. Bye.